Okay, I don't know if this is gonna work or not, but now the wind's picking up a little bit, so I'm sorry if the audio is kind of crappy here, but this is the Sony A7RV. Actually, hang on, let me back up. This is just the box for the Sony A7RV. That's recording me right now is the Sony A7RV. And well, in this video, we're gonna go and I'm gonna give you my thoughts on the camera. So let's do that, huh? All right, so before we get started, I do want to thank Terry over at Bellmeyer Camera in Fenton, Michigan for lending me this camera to try out. As always, thanks, man. If you have any camera needs, please check out Bellmeyer Camera. Link in the description. Terry will hook you up for sure. I am not going to be doing a very scientific kind of review on this. This is going to be very much focused at the idea of practical usage with this camera. Full disclosure, I actually switched from Sony back to Canon about 2 years ago, and so I'm not currently a Sony user, and I'm interested to see if some of the newer tech that Sony has added to their cameras might be enough to make me consider coming back to Sony. Also, is this, you know, a camera that I would use on a practical basis for stuff like this, vlogging or shooting videos, but also having the ability to utilize what is an insane level of resolution from a photo standpoint at 61 megapixels. So yeah, I guess we'll find out. The other side of this whole idea that I had for this video is that normally when I do videos that talk about gear, I'm usually like in my little studio space shooting on the blue backdrop with, you know, the camera in my hand, and I'm not necessarily demonstrating utilizing the camera, not like every shot. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity in this video to shoot the whole damn video with it, including any of the stills that I show you. Everything's going to be shot on this camera. The only things that won't be is the B-roll of the camera itself, which should make sense because obviously, well, yeah. Also, that being said, that means that, oh, that guy's car is really loud. That being said, that means that I am actually going to utilize the 8K video recording in this camera for the whole video to show you guys how that would work in a vlog style situation. I don't know why you would need 8K in a vlogging capacity, but I'm interested to see how well it does. So I'm also interested to see, I mean, the autofocus seems to be keeping up pretty good. It's stickier than I remember the Sony autofocus being, and Sony's always been pretty good with video autofocus, so this is even an improvement over what I remember seeing in the past. Oh man. All right, so it is so cold right now, so I am going to go and try to wrap the rest of this video up elsewhere. Who knows, we might spend a little more time in the studio environment because there's heat there. All right, let's go. All right, so now that we're in the studio and it's a little warmer, let's just go over a few of the things that I really like about the Sony A7RV and a few of the things that I don't like as much about the Sony A7RV. Let's just go ahead and get the negative stuff out of the way. I don't want to dwell on it, so let's just get that going. So the stuff I don't care for mainly revolves around the sensor resolution. And even though that is the camera's superpower, and it's amazing that they've packed 61 megapixels into this camera and you can shoot 8K video and all of that stuff. A couple of things that I've been noticing: the burst rate in photo mode is relatively slow. I think from the standpoint of using continuous autofocus and shooting in RAW, you're only gonna get like 5 to 7 frames per second, which there are other cameras from other manufacturers out there that can shoot a dizzying like 40 frames per second at a lower price point. On the other hand, I do not believe that that's the kind of shooting that this camera is for. So keeping in mind what this camera really should be considered for, let's move into the things I really like about the camera. because there's a lot more of those. So let's start off with the ergonomics. The general ergonomics of this camera are excellent. I am starting to be a little bit more of a believer on the Sony side. There's something about a camera that can be almost entirely operated with one hand. Things like the location of the power switch, the mode switch for switching between photo, video, and slow motion mode, that placement is spectacular. Easy to get to, and it's very natural to switch things that way. Also very thoughtful about that mode is the fact that there's just a little bit of like a push-in button to lock it so that you don't accidentally nudge it into a different mode while you're shooting. For someone like myself, the deeper grip is a welcomed thing from Sony. In previous generations of Sony cameras that I personally owned, the grip always seemed a little small and like my hands didn't quite fit on the camera properly, so it was always sort of a struggle to figure out how to hold the camera. Do I need a battery grip? Should I put a cage on it? All of the above became a little bit of a sticking point with me. For shooting in both photo mode and in video mode, the autofocus is awesome. I would say that it's really close to on par with what Canon's doing, which means that really Sony and Canon are kind of worlds away from everybody else from what I can tell from the autofocus game. The last real standout in my mind is the flip screen. Not only is the flip screen resolution and image beautiful, but the design of this flip screen is actually really, really thoughtful. It is one of these newer, vari-angle flip screens that also has the tilt ability to it, which I think is brilliant. I think it's a smart way to use a vari-angle screen. It helps to keep the rotating screen out of the way of the cables that are coming out of the side of the camera if you're plugging in microphones or monitors or any of the other things you might plug in. So this is the first of the low light tests. This is ISO 800. Looks pretty clean. Just generally color corrected. ISO 12800. Also looks surprisingly clean. ISO 16000. ISO 20,000. ISO 25,600 looks amazingly good. And shockingly, I gotta pause it here. This is ISO 32,000. And this is shooting at 8K 24p at S-Log2, and the only color grading that I did with this file is to put the S-Log2 to Rec 709 LUT onto the footage, and it looks like totally usable. There's obviously some noise down here, but it is impressive to say the least. Right now we're going to do a quick rolling shutter test. I just whip panned in front of my cooking range, and you will see quite clearly that there is an awful lot of rolling shutter with this camera, which I guess is to be expected. You can see here that you have those vertical lines are very much not vertical. Anyway, this is very much to be expected with a 61 megapixel camera shooting at 8K. You're going to have issues that readout speed's just not fast enough to be able to keep that thing, keep those lines vertical. Maybe if it was a stacked sensor, we're not there yet through Sony. Honestly, the jello is pretty bad here, but yeah. So all in all, not bad on low light. Rolling shutter could be better, but that's just the truth of it. As for stills, I think it's to be expected here that the stills from the 61 megapixel camera are incredible. Hands down, I don't think I've personally ever shot with a camera that has this much resolution. I've been wanting to get my hands on one of the Fujifilm 100 megapixel medium format cameras to screw around with that, but 61 megapixels is just crazy with how much detail you can dig out of these files. It's just incredible how far you can punch in on these and still have no perceived pixelation. So, if I throw one of my new presets on here, that's a little bit strong, but we can kind of bring that in. This is a very, very impressive looking photo for just a quick snap. You know, again, these 61 megapixel files are just insane to look at. I will say a little bit of criticism with the A7R5 is that when you're shooting in the electronic shutter mode, you will find that you're getting issues with residential LED lights. You can see a little bit of banding here, and then like near my Christmas tree, using the electronic shutter, we're getting this really bad banding and flickering that is a result of residential LED light flicker. I tried multiple different things in order to try to get the electronic shutter in stills mode to not cause this banding, but because of how high the megapixel count is on this sensor and the fact that I'm sure it just can't read out all those pixels fast enough with the electronic shutter in order to avoid this kind of thing. It's kind of like with the rolling shutter. It's just a lot of data to process quickly. Now, aside from everything else that I've talked about, I think it should be discussed that the Sony A7RV is probably more of a specialized camera than a general tool for certain people. It's one of these cameras that I think it would be amazing and very specialized for some specific use cases. Use cases like studio work, product photography. Some landscape photography situations would probably be excellent with this camera because the ability to punch in to multiple different places in one photo to get different compositions. But I will say that because of the very high resolution sensor, this camera is less practical for the general everyday photographer or the sports photographer who needs a very fast shooting camera. So events and sports and high action type things, even wildlife photography where you might think this camera would excel, could be problematic from the standpoint of capturing fast action with the slower burst rates that it shoots at. Additionally, because of the high... Okay, so that was actually right on cue. Additionally, because of the high resolution sensor, you are also going to run into issues with memory card space. Just as I was coming to that point, the camera ran out of memory card space and stopped recording. So I had to re-record this part. It was actually really perfect because it was right on cue. Anyway, so with files at the resolution that this camera can spit them out, you're going to fill memory cards and hard drives and things like that much, much faster than you would on a camera like the Sony A7 IV or the Canon R6 Mark II, which are 24 megapixel sensors and can still shoot some really incredibly high resolution things without the penalty of an enormous amount of data. So it's something to keep in mind. If you are well rigged with a lot of storage capacity or intend to be, or if you're looking to shoot high level studio stuff or product photography or shoot incredibly high resolution 8K video, this camera could be for you. Now here's the big question for me. Has the Sony A7RV converted me back to wanting to be a Sony user again from leaving Sony to go back to Canon? What do you think? Do you think it has? The thing is, no, not at this time. But I will say that I've really enjoyed the use of the Sony A7RV. I think it's an amazing piece of technology. I think that it's definitely going to be an incredible tool for someone's tool bag. I'm always looking for the camera that feels like the right tool for me, and that's what I recommend that you do as well. If you are looking at this video with the hope for me to be able to say, this is it, this is the best camera ever produced, please go purchase this camera. The most important thing to keep in mind is the best camera for you is the best camera for you. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. There's a new link in the description that's called Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to try that out, I would love to have you buy me a coffee if you want, if it's something you want to do and support this channel and caffeinate me, right? Either way, if you like this video, consider subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next video. Talk to you later.